All right, we are live. Welcome, everybody, to the Casuals MMA podcast, part of FanstreamSports.com, Southwest Florida, actually South Florida's #1 sports podcasting network, led by the JP Show. He's up there on the radio. I don't have my notes. I forget what stations he's on exactly, but we always call in there on Tuesdays to talk a little MMA. He's great. I love JP. I always love talking to him. He's a ton of fun. And be sure to always check out the other podcasts on our network. We actually have 2 other podcasts that got selected, nominated to be part of best podcast in the area, I think, in Tampa and St. Pete. So that's pretty cool. Set the Sails. And for this morning, we have Sports Caffeine. That's right. So both great podcasts as well. So be sure to check out FanstreamSports.com and all the great podcasts on there as well. But in the meantime, I'm sure everybody's ready to talk UFC 252. We'll get there shortly. But first, we got a few news and notes to go around in the league, catch up on a little bit. But let's start with introductions real quick. Sean, Dan, welcome back. What's going on, gentlemen?
Excited, baby. The trilogy's here, man. This is a big one.
I'm excited, definitely for the trilogy, also for the co-main event. I think Sean O'Malley definitely has something to prove, and I think it's going to be a big fight for him.
I can't wait to see Sean O'Malley fight again. Is he going to live up to the hype? Is he not? Like, this is another big step up in competition. His last one certainly was. And then this one against Marlon Vera this weekend is going to be another big step up in competition. So we're going to see if he's the hype train's real, man. We're going to see if that keeps on chugging. So in the meantime, let's just cover some quick news and notes around the league. So Paige Van Zandt made me put a foot in my mouth, and she ended up signing with Bare Knuckle Boxing.
Yeah,
I said there was no way. She makes her living on Instagram. She's been open about how much money she makes enough money on Instagram. And then we're like, well, she's not going to go mess up her face in bare knuckle boxing. Well, guess what? She just signed $1 million fight contract with them.
Yeah, and the whole reason that you thought she wouldn't do it is the exact reason why she did it.
Yeah, exactly. She was pretty open about that too. She was like, I don't want to just be known for the pretty face. I want to go out there and fight, which is super commendable. But at the same time, you got to know where your money comes in too.
Listen, though, I think we've talked about it a couple of times. That bare knuckle boxing is brutal.
Brutal. It'll change your face.
Yeah, so unless she's getting paid a lot of money, which I'm sure they coughed up a pretty penny to have her, I just don't see why.
Yeah, well, she said she signed $1 million deal. I don't know how many fights that's for, but I mean, hey, she's making 7 figures
now because she can have sponsors back now.
Yeah, which she could have had that in Bellator though too. You know,
she could have.
Yeah, it would have been interesting.
She signed up for 4 fights in bare knuckle. I'm really surprised that she did that. I'd say like 1 or 2, but 4 fights. She's going to definitely have to put in some work. She's going to get her money's worth for sure. Or Bare Knuckle's going to get their money's worth with her.
Oh, they will for sure. They've already been doing pretty well themselves. Bare Knuckle Boxing's been doing pretty well. So you throw in a big name like Paige Van Zandt, I think that's going to be big for the promotion. But I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But anyways, let's move on. Luke Rockhold's already talking about coming out of retirement. He wants another matchup with Chris Weidman. I think that's if he's going to come back, that's the only fight to come back to is him fighting Chris Weidman. To me, both guys just aren't the same. Luke Rockhold, I think, got knocked out twice before he ended up going into retirement, and Chris Weidman has just not looked the same in recent years. So,
yeah, ever since the first time they squared off for the title that Rockhold won, neither of them have been the same since. I think between the two of them, only Weidman, or they've only won once combined. I think I could be wrong about that. I haven't looked that up, but just off the top of my head, and that was Weidman a week ago.
Yeah,
I don't think Rockhold's won since that fight. And Weidman, Weidman beat Gastelum. I'm sorry, so they have 2 wins.
That's true. So, I think that was a close fight too. Wasn't Gastelum winning that fight? And I think Weidman submitted him.
And then he gassed out, and Weidman took him down and submitted him.
Yeah. So that one's a little surprising, but I mean, well, it is and it isn't. I don't know. Rockhold is something else. He's a character in and of himself. But then we have Zabit is not getting a fight, apparently. He was supposed to fight Korean Zombie, and that's fallen through. Zombie had to pull out, and apparently the UFC's not offering him another top 5 featherweight for some reason.
It was not Korean Zombie. It was Yair.
Oh, that's right. Sorry about that. Yep, it was Yair. Yair pulled out with an injury. I think he had a high ankle sprain. But yeah, he had to end up pulling out, and now they're like, how would they not offer Zabit a top 5 guy? Like Calvin Cater's sitting right there. I wonder if they threw the offer. I would have to think that they threw the offer to Calvin Cater.
I think the thing is Zabit beat Calvin Cater not very long ago, pretty handedly, like pretty convincingly. Yeah. And if you're Zabit, it's like, all right, yeah, I could do the fight and show people why I deserve that title fight, but I think I kind of already done that, and I think I'm the next guy there. I don't think many people have an argument against me, so why not just give me the title fight?
Yeah, if that's what he's vying for, certainly go for it, baby.
Yeah, he's been tweeting at Volkanovski to step up, but Volkanovski's like, dude, I'm the champ. I don't fill in on short notice.
I saw that comment. I was laughing about that. But hey, truth be told, he has the right to say it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're the champ, you don't fill in on short notice.
Yeah, no, for sure not. For sure not.
Call the shots. It's your division.
Yeah, and at the same time, I can't imagine that the UFC would, put Zabit in another match. I feel like between him and Yair, I feel like they're next. And I don't know if maybe they would end up putting him against the winner of, Zombie and Ortega, but I just can't imagine them just, at the end of the day or the 11th hour throwing somebody in with Zabit when he's so high. He's fought his way to getting that title shot. So I can't imagine.
With the Justin Gaethje and Khabib card coming, there's some big fights. And if Volkanovski's not ready to go, I'm sure Max would be willing to fight Zabit. I haven't heard anybody, mentioning that possible matchup.
That's true. I mean, we could see. I don't know if Max is just tired and wants to kind of take a break, but that would be a great matchup, Sean. I didn't even think about that.
Honestly, I just thought about that.
Why? Yeah, why not?
Because a lot of people have been saying Cater and Korean Zombie, and I've heard even somebody say Ortega, but nobody said Holloway.
That is 100% true. Why not Holloway? Because if that's a good feather in your cap if you're Zabit to say, hey, I've done it all. I fought everybody. I
think that'd be the one non-title fight Zabit would take.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm sure in a lot of people's minds, Max is still the champion after their last fight with Volt.
For sure. Because
they need a trilogy. Even though it's not warranted, it needs to happen.
It's not. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon because the featherweight division's too heavy at the top. There's too many guys waiting.
Well, that's what Max has to take out some contenders.
Yeah, no, but and for sure, if he's gonna get a third fight, what I'm saying is it's gonna be down the road. There's too many guys in the 145 division that deserve a title shot against Volkanovski next, for him to go next. So we'll see. I don't know, but I think that would be a great matchup. And you know what, Max Holloway's always game, so it'd be interesting to see if he steps in on short notice and would be able to take that fight. But it's pretty soon, so I don't know if he will or not. That's a heavy weight cut for him.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Push it back to that October.
Yeah.
October card.
Yeah, that's fair. But then we have Yoel Romero ended up having to pull out against Ryan Hall later this month. That stinks. Right. They didn't talk about why yet. That was just released. I think it was released today that Yoel had to pull out. But that was going to be a fun matchup. I was really looking forward to that. Yoel is a beast, and Ryan Hall's a beast, so it would have been fun to watch that fight. So hopefully we'll get that before the end of the year, depending on why he had to end up pulling out. And then Robert Whittaker is taking on Jared Cannonier. So
that's a fight that's supposed to happen earlier in the year.
Yep, and a lot of people are asking, dude, why are you going to do that? Don't you want the rematch? And you got to love Bobby Knuckles for this. He's like, why should I sit around and wait?
That got postponed because Cannonier tore a bicep. Am I correct?
No, I think Whittaker had some family issues, I think, or something.
I thought it was the bicep. I thought Cannonier had to have surgery because he tore his bicep.
No, I think
I was conflicted with
pulled out of a replacement fight, I think, because of that.
Okay.
So,
but yeah, if you're Robert Whittaker, you look at it. I mean, you saw he kind of had the ring rust against Adesanya, and he still had to shake it off early in that Till fight. But you saw once he got into the scrap a little bit, that's when he started to become the old Bobby Knuckles. So he's got to stay fresh, stay clean.
Yeah, 100%. So stay sharp, stay fast, baby. I'm looking forward to that. That should be a good one. See if Robert Whittaker can take it, because Jared Cannonier's been waiting in the waiting list for the middleweight title shot too. So we'll see if he can take over the moment. Yeah, and then Robbie Lawler steps in to face Neil Magny on August 29th. Geoff Neal had to pull out. He was hospitalized recently. That's a tough break. Geoff Neal, we talked about this before. He's a top welterweight. He was actually going back to his waiter job. I think it was Longhorn Steakhouse or something during the pandemic because he couldn't fight. You're talking about a top-tier welterweight is waiting tables.
Yeah, I think he's still on his first contract, so I think that's what's hurting him.
Yeah, for sure. But that's a very unfortunate. I think Geoff Neal and Neil Magny was a perfect matchup, but this is a great opportunity for Neal to fight Robbie Lawler. Just put another stamp.
That's a fun matchup.
Yep, that's going to be a great matchup. That'll be great for him. So we'll see how that is. And who doesn't love watching Robbie Lawler fight? That guy's a monster.
No, I'm excited about that fight, but I'm even more excited, which I know you'll be disappointed about. They verbally booked the Colby Covington and Tyron Woodley fight for September 19th.
Yep.
So I'm going to be excited for that fight. I think we've all been waiting to see one of them shut one another up. So I'm excited for that fight coming up.
Tyron's just kind of a disappointment.
I'm not excited about that anymore, man. Like Tyron's just looks so flat. Like I keep saying, oh, he's going to be motivated for this fight. Oh, he's going to be motivated for this fight. And he never is. He comes out flat so often lately. That's why he doesn't deserve to be champ right now. I mean,
for one of the strongest pound for pound punchers in the game, he just doesn't let it go.
No, he doesn't. So
he's not willing to take one to land that shot.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, man. He's the man. I would really like to see that, but it is what it is. And then thank you for bringing that up, Dan. And then the other, I think, last note that we had was Corey Anderson actually moving from the UFC over to Bellator.
He asked to get cut, and they gave it to him.
Yep, he did. I mean, he looked like he was going to go on a hot streak after he beat the rising star and Johnny Walker, and then he just fell flat. Yep, and so now he's over to Bellator. I think you know what, though? He's the kind of guy that would do really well in Bellator. Corey Anderson, he'd do really good over there.
He'd end up being like a Ryan Bader over in Bellator.
Exactly. And you know what? Sometimes that's not a bad thing, man. Sometimes just go to a smaller division. You know your place. You tried the UFC, it didn't work out. Yeah, exactly. You'll make more money. You can hold a belt, and you can fight some other big names over there in Bellator. So, and then, also, Dan, thank you for sending me the message. They also cut heavyweight Tai Tuivasa, which isn't really a surprise. He was on a 3-fight skid. He came into the UFC, I think, at 6 or 7-0, and he won his first 2 or 3 fights by knockout. It looks like, oh, great, we have this nice young prospect here. And then that fell through, and he just couldn't pull it through. He looked terrible in his last 3 fights. He didn't progress in his game. So it was extremely disappointing to see that. But he's still young. He's not even 30 yet, so he can turn this thing around, go maybe change fight camps or something, get a few wins under his belt, and maybe in a local circuit or something, and then come right back to the UFC. UFC is always looking for heavyweights. That's always such a shallow division.
Yeah, you've seen it happen before. Look at Rumble. He left. He worked on some things, and when he came back, he was one of the best in the division. So
absolutely,
it's possible. Man. It's not the end of the road.
Yeah. All right, and then I think before we go over to UFC 252, Sean, you said you got a potential fight announcement.
I actually meant to. We talked about this in our pregame, but Ariel Helwani saying that is it Kamzat? With this, I always forget how to say his name. This guy that's on the tear, Chimov.
Oh yeah.
That called out Connor.
I think he's verbally agreed with Anthony Pettis right now.
Really?
I'd like to see that?
Yeah.
He's going to be huge. That's going to be a stomping. That's not even going to be a close fight. He's huge.
Well,
yeah.
Fighting 170, man.
So if you haven't watched Chimaev, he's a guy that, he won 2 fights in 2 months. He was trying to get a 3rd fight. Did they say when that fight would potentially be for with Pettis? Here in August or September?
I think they're still working on a date.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he was trying to get 3 fights in 3 months. That kid's an animal. So that'd be interesting. He's a kid to watch. He's a new up and comer. So let's see.
He's 2.0 apparently.
Yeah. He's going to be huge. That's not a good fight for Pettis. Hey, Pettis is always game to take on anybody, but I don't think that's a good fight at all, dude. But to each their own, I suppose. All right. Any other news, notes, or anything before we move on to UFC 252?
Nope.
I think we ran all through it.
Perfect. We're back at the Apex Center again this weekend for UFC 252, headlined by the heavyweight matchup, the trilogy, or to cap off the trilogy between Daniel Cormier and Stipe Miocic. These guys are 1-1 apiece. I think everybody at this point knows their story. I can't wait to talk about this fight. And then we got a few other high-profile fights on here, especially the co-main and another heavyweight matchup in Junior Dos Santos and Rosenstruck. So we'll get into that here in a minute. Let's start from the bottom of the card, though, first. I don't really think there's anything on the undercard. We kind of talked about this. They have a lot of newcomers on the undercard to the UFC, except for Jim Miller. And go ahead.
We say it all the time, man. Sometimes these are the undercards that are the best.
Undercards are always on fire because these guys are fighting for UFC contracts. That's because we don't cover it. Go ahead, Sean.
I feel like since the restart, all the cards have been really good, but I feel like the undercards have outshined the main cards in total.
A lot, oftentimes. Because again, I mean, these guys, you figure the differential in the fighting styles or in the level of competition is so different that it creates these somewhat lopsided fights. Once you get to a peak level, the competition gets a lot closer. But when you get back to the lower level, like two guys, even though they might be 12-0, that doesn't mean they've fought the same type of competition.
Yeah, who knows what those guys are going to look like?
So you have a bigger differential in like their experience and fight experience, etc. So
to your point, Ryan Bader and John Jones were both undefeated when they fought each other.
Yeah. Well, in Ryan Bader's defense, John Jones was running over everybody with a great record and big history behind him.
Couldn't even make it to a title fight.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a good UFC career, but that's what I'm just saying. To your point, you never know what you're going to get.
No, you never know who's coming in. So always fun. I mean, you have some good matchups. TJ Brown, Danny Chavez. I was reading about these guys. They both have a lot of experience behind them. Danny Chavez, I think, is coming from PFL, Professional Fight League, which has some good experienced fighters over there. It's kind of like the minor leagues of MMA when you consider the UFC, obviously the big show. So that's a good fight. Felice Herrig is coming back after a 2-year layoff, and she was on a 2-fight losing streak against a very game Jandiroba, who's on a 2 or 3 fight UFC winning streak. She's 15-1, so this should be a pretty fun fight. And then, of course, Jim Miller's fighting. I mean, the guy's having his 1,000th UFC fight, which is pretty exciting.
I think he's
can never be upset about seeing him on a card.
I think he's tied for most finishes, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. He has a couple records that he could potentially break in this card on Saturday.
Yeah, finishes. Yeah, Jim Miller's always game for a fight.
He's a monster, that kid. Actually, I should just say old man. He's a journeyman by this point.
He's got to be almost 40.
But let's get into the main card, man. So, unfortunately, the first fight that was supposed to be on here dropped out. That was a rematch between Ankalaev and Kutabella. Kutabella actually tested positive for COVID, so he had to end up pulling out. If you didn't know, this fight earlier in the year, Ankalaev is a huge prospect coming into the UFC. He's been on a tear recently. He actually stopped Kutabella, but it was a very controversial decision. It was a really weird fight. It was earlier this year. He actually staggered Kutabella, and it looked like the ref wanted to jump in and stop it, but he didn't. And then Kutabella decided to start throwing punches, even though he's still wobbling. And then, like mid-punch, he comes and stops the fight. It was a really weird situation. So I think they were giving them a rematch of that fight. But unfortunately, we're going to have to wait for that one and hope Kutabella gets better and recovers from COVID. So instead, in that place, we actually have one that bumped down a notch in John Dodson versus Merab. I don't even ever know how to say his name. But Volashvili. Yeah, they even pronounce it like 37. I already did. They say it 37 different ways in the fights too. So John and Merab fighting. They were actually a little bit higher on this card, but then they moved up the Herbert Burns versus Daniel Pineda fight, which we'll get into here in a minute. So guys, what are your thoughts on John Dodson versus Merab?
I think it's just a veteran savvy fight. Two guys that have fought a bunch of guys in the division, really not going anywhere at this point in their careers. But I think it's just a fun fight.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I feel like John Dodson always shoots for the stars, so I always get excited to watch his fight, win or lose. So I think it's a good entrance into the card for sure.
Yeah, and I think to both of your guys' point, this is going to be for fireworks. John Dawson's a heavy hitter for bantamweight. He's always knocked people out. He throws hard, and Merab is just a good all-around MMA fighter. So I think that this one's just to get everybody going, have a good fight, throw some haymakers, and see what happens, and kind of get the crowd up on their feet. So who do you guys have in this one? Merab's actually a pretty big favorite coming into this one.
I got John.
Yeah, you got Dodson?
Yeah, I got Dodson.
Likewise, I got John.
Yeah, actually, I do too. I was thinking the same thing at this one. He has the heavier hands. If they're both well-rounded MMA fighters, you got to pick the odd thing out for them. And I think what stands out is John's power and his punches. So,
what are the fighting odds on this, Ryan?
Yeah, so
pretty big.
Yeah, Marav is like a minus 225, I think, to Dodson's plus 175. So pretty decent odds for sure. Yeah. So, any other questions, comments, concerns about that one before we move on? No? Nope. All right, cool. Because we got a more interesting fight coming up next with Daniel Pineda and Herbert Burns. If you don't know, Herbert Burns.
Baby Burns.
Yeah, he's Baby Burns. He's Gilbert Burns' little brother coming into the UFC. He's had some success. I think he's on a 3-fight win streak. Yeah, he's on like a 3-fight win streak since he's coming to the UFC. He just beat Evan Dunham, so that's a pretty good name.
Got his first knockout before that.
Yep, he's a submission guy. He's a jiu-jitsu guy. He's fighting a tough opponent in Daniel Pineda.
Daniel Pineda, 18 subs.
Yep. So this is going to be a jiu-jitsu match. This is going to be fun. Hopefully we'll see some high-level grappling in this one because I don't think we've seen like a really good grappling match lately, have we?
No, not really.
Not one that I can think
of. The fun
about.
thing about when you get these kind of matchups in MMA is you're getting what is the Eddie Bravo thing that he does?
A twister, or what are you talking about?
No, but it's like grappling with open hand strikes. It's like grappling with strikes.
Oh yeah, combat grappling.
Yeah, so you're gonna get combat grappling, so it's gonna be a little bit more interesting than just watching, just a straight up jiu-jitsu match.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? I think it's always fun when you see two different styles come. And when I say two different styles, I mean they're both jiu-jitsu guys first and foremost. But I just think it's always fun just to see like where their minds are at, where they're grappling, because grappling's a lot harder in MMA, considering that you have the strikes thrown in. It's harder to throw submissions with those gloves. So this one should be a fun fight. Daniel Pineda's coming over from the PFL. He had both his last wins turned over because before that he was on like a 6-fight win streak. So he's just an experienced guy in the MMA world. This one will be fun, and I think Herbert Burns actually has a huge fight differential in this one. He's the bigger opponent in this one, so we'll see what goes on. Any thoughts on that one before we go ahead and move on, boys?
Nope.
Cool.
No.
Yeah, I think I had. Did I end up pulling up the odds on that one?
No, you didn't mention it.
Okay.
Ryan, who you got taking this fight? And Sean?
I had Burns for this one.
Burns, likewise.
Yeah, I haven't seen enough of Pineda to be able to say Burns is on a hot streak within the UFC. He's the bigger man as well, so I think he has a lot of hype behind him. When you got a guy like a journeyman like Daniel Pineda who's 26-13, it kind of tells you a little bit about like where that opponent is. They're always going to come in game, but I think Herbert has a little bit of the momentum behind him right now. Being the younger and fresher fighter coming off of a better win streak.
Yeah, Burns even had the nerve to say that he thinks Pineda is a bigger challenge for him than if he were to fight Volkanovski, just for the simple fact that he has jiu-jitsu underneath his belt. So I think like you said, it's definitely going to be a good, ground matchup, which we haven't seen in quite a while.
Yeah, just a good jiu-jitsu match, man. Like if you watch high-level grappling, that stuff's fun. Where it doesn't get fun for fans is when you have guys that are wrestling that are going to sit on top of you, aka Ben Askren. Like a guy like Ben Askren's going
to control you. Yeah,
they're just going to sit on top of you. They're going to hold position, or an Usman who's going to press you against the cage and not really do anything significant. That's bad viewing for casual MMA fans. Like that's what gives it a bad name. If you have high level grappling, that's exciting. That's intense.
Yeah, like Damian Maia is always throwing subs.
Oh my God. If you want to watch some high level grappling, actually, if you just want to watch fun, fast paced grappling, watch Sonnen's underground submission. That's on Sundays, usually after the pay-per-views, but they have it on replay on Fight Pass. Ton of fun to watch. So they have great guys grappling in there, but and it's always more fun too when you see guys that are able to transition well. They use their punches before they transition, or to help their jiu-jitsu. I mean, that's what makes MMA so much fun. So hopefully this one will live up to the hype. So, and then on to the next one. Actually, Dan, while we jump into this one, do you mind pulling up the stat or the odds for this one? I don't think I ended up putting it in because I thought the Miller and Pichel fight was going to jump into the main card after Ankalaev. after the ankle off fight fell off. But anyways, so our big firework matchup in here is the heavyweight battle between Junior Dos Santos and Rosenstruck. Man, I don't even know what to expect from this one because you're looking at even though they're both primarily strikers, you're looking at two very different styles of fighting. You have Junior Dos Santos, who's more of a finesse heavyweight boxer. He likes using his jab. He moves really well in and out of range. And then Rosenstruck is waiting to land that big right hand. He comes from a lot of kickboxing background, but he's going to stand very still. He's going to look like if you've watched Yoel Romero before, where he has that awkward style. He stands right in front of you. Rosenstruck's going to do the same thing and look for openings. Granted, that didn't work for him against his last opponent in Ngannou, who knocked him out in I think it was like 28 seconds, but that's also Ngannou. Ngannou's on another level. So this one is very interesting. Going to be a matchup of styles. And that's the other thing, too, is a big question mark is where's Rosenstruck's head coming into this one after getting knocked out like that in his last fight?
Both mentally and physically. Because, sometimes you're never the same after getting knocked out, especially.
And we said that about Stipe after he fought Ngannou and lost to Cormier. We felt like he didn't take enough time off, gather his thoughts, and things like that. So it may be the same thing.
Yeah, it'd be interesting because you got to figure this guy. Ignore his 11-fight MMA career. He also has like 85 kickboxing matches under his belt. Rosenstruck does, much like Adesanya did, right, when he came in. So he's got a ton of experience. He's taken the shots before. That's why it's going to be interesting to see who can impose their will better. Even though Rosenstruck's the bigger favorite in this one, okay? Not by much, but he is by a little bit. And I would not be surprised if Junior Dos Santos was able to pull this one off, even though he's coming off of 2 losses himself, because of the fact that he just moves so well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I feel like Junior Dos Santos definitely has the advantage with being a lot more agile. But then at the same time, I mean, even Alistair Overeem is a lot more agile than Rosenstruck, but he just got caught. It took that one hit. And that could put the lights out for Junior Dos Santos. But if he can, come in and stay out and use the cage to his advantage, even though it's a smaller cage at the apex, I think he has a good shot at pulling it off. But Rosenstruck catches you with just one hit and it's lights out.
Yeah. The difference, though, I would say between there is if you look at Alistair's fight style, he has a very awkward style where he leans his chest over his knees. He reaches in almost like a wrestler, like he's going to grapple with you like that. It's a very awkward style. So he already puts himself in a bad position to get punched for that reason. And even if you consider his athleticism and how that carried him, he was winning that fight for the most part up until the end when Rosenstruck split his mouth open. So if we're going on that alone, I would almost have to pick Junior Dos Santos for the upset. But
now my question to both of you is, let's say Junior does pull off this fight. Do you think that he still has it in him to be, a contender for the belt, or do you think he's just going to be a gatekeeper for some of the other heavyweights coming up?
He's been a gatekeeper for years.
He's going to be. I mean, even if you look at his last 2 losses, he lost against Curtis Blades, who is probably a future heavyweight champ if Ngannou wasn't there, and Francis Ngannou, who is going to be the next heavyweight champ whenever he either fights Stipe or Stipe, which we'll talk about this later, potentially retires after this fight. So he lost.
He said who you think is going to win.
Yeah, but
no, I didn't because I will talk about that in a little bit. But he lost by knockout to both of those guys. To me, his championship days are behind him.
Okay. I feel a little bit differently, but we'll leave that for after the fact.
Hey, I wish not. I love Junior. Junior's the man. I've watched him since the start of his UFC career, but those fights that he had with Cain Velasquez changed his face and just the way he's fought. I think that derailed his.
That trilogy was no joke.
Yeah, that derailed his career, just taking the punishment that he did from Cain in the last 2 of those fights. So that's my thoughts on that one. For my pick, though, I'm going to go with Rosenstruck. I'm just going to go with the more experienced boxer or kickboxer here in this instance and see if he can turn it around. Because the other thing, too, is, as we have alluded to, Dos Santos isn't going to fight for a belt again, so I'd rather see another contender throw their hat in the ring, and I'd like to see Rosenstruck.
That's a good point.
I'd like to see Rosenstruck win.
Yeah,
I'm going Dos Santos, man. I don't know. I have a hard time trusting somebody's chin when they get knocked out the way he did and coming back this fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got folded.
Junior still got power, man. Last thing to go is power.
That right hand, baby. I'm gonna go with Sean. I'm gonna go Junior. And like you said, you didn't call it. We got a minus 145 for Rosenstruck and a plus 115 on the betting odds for Junior Dos Santos. So I think it's gonna play out in the fight. Those odds as well.
Yeah. And again, that's not a bad pick. Like, I would almost want to pick Junior Dos Santos, but just for the sake, sometimes I like to see the guy that we need to watch fight come in. So that, he has another chance of going to the belt. What's that?
I was hyped for Rosenstruck. Even going into the Ngannou fight, I was really, thinking like, hey, maybe this guy can actually put him out. So I'm definitely on that same side of the fence with you to see somebody else come into the mix and mix things up in the heavyweight division. Because in any sport, if there's a heavyweight division, everybody wants that to be the biggest and the best. So I think he'd be a good contender. So if he can get through Junior Dos Santos, by all means. But I just think Junior's a little bit too agile for him, and he's got those heavy hands.
Yeah. So we'll see. That one's going to be exciting. So I think everybody's got their picks in. Is that correct? I think we're good. All right. So, guys, real quick, I want to
get on to the real fights.
Well, I was going to say, actually, you know what? Yeah, let's talk about the co-main event first. Or should we do DraftKings right now?
You can do DraftKings right now.
Yeah, let's turn it over before we do our co-main and our main event here. Let's turn it over to some fantasy sports. I'm picking it back up a little bit. We're going to talk about my favorite fight or lineup that I can pick. If you don't know DraftKings, you essentially get to pick. You get a set amount of money as your salary for your team. You get to pick 6 fighters. Essentially, the way they give you money is it's going to be enough allocated for you can pick 4 favorites and 2 underdogs. That's usually how they make you pick in there. And usually my lineups are focused on the 50-50s and double ups. So that means anybody in the top half of those groups that you sign up in are going to win money, either double it up or even just a few more bucks. So it's a slow grind, but you know what? I like my guarantees more than anything else. So usually what I'll do,
if you're just trying to play for fun, make a little bit of extra change, that's probably what you want to do.
Absolutely. And you know what? It makes the fights fun. Even if you have, I just do $5 and $10 double ups every once in a while, it makes the fights much more fun because you start cheering for fights that you normally wouldn't. It makes them a lot more intense because you're like, who's winning this one? How many points do I have? Because that's the other thing that goes into it. So the lineup I'm going to give you is mostly for the 50-50s and double ups. If you were to go for a bigger pot, if you were going to go trying to draft for and try and win $1 million or $500,000 lineup, you got to kind of get a little risky in here. So maybe you could use some of my dark horse picks. But so here's my lineup, and I'll tell you why. I have Daniel Cormier, Rosenstruck, Burns, Dodson, O'Malley, and Pichel. So Pichel and Dodson are my 2 underdog picks. Okay, I think Pichel is a good pick against Miller because they're both older guys, but Pichel has the knockout power. He's taller, so if he can stay along the outside, he might be able to pull that fight through. He also has a good fantasy point draft. He averages 73.5 points per fight, which is huge. Yeah. And then John Dodson also with the heavy hands. If he gets a knockout, that's going to be huge point-wise. He averages 69, which is pretty good. It's not fantastic, but he's also my lowest point differential. I thought he was the best of the underdogs that I could have picked that had the most likely chance of winning for this one. As far as Daniel Cormier goes, I picked him because he's kind of alluded to the fact that he's going to be wrestling more. That counts as a lot of points, especially when you consider that's a 5-round fight. You need to pick those big, longer fights because you have more potential for points. Significant strikes only count you for half a point. And in case you were wondering, you think that's going to be important to you, Daniel Cormier had 275, I think, significant strikes in their last fight. So that's a lot of points.
Yeah, I think you could probably look it up and see what he scored against Stipe in the last fight.
Yeah, they both have scored significant points. Actually, Daniel Cormier, even though he lost that fight in the 4th round, he actually only had 15 less points. I think Stipe, who won by knockout in the 4th round, finished with 117 points. And Cormier,
insane in that fight.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to hold off. I'll get to that here in a little bit. And then Rosenstruck versus Dos Santos. This is a coin flip, people.
Yeah,
Dos Santos.
Whoever you think is going to land the big shot.
Someone's going to get knocked out in this fight, or there's going to be a lot of heavy shots thrown here. So this is going to be a high point fight, regardless whether they go all 3 or someone gets knocked out.
Which do you trust more?
I know, right? So Dos Santos is my top pick for a dark horse in this one, just so you know. But otherwise, Rosenstruck, he also averages 80 points per fight as well. And then Herbert Burns, through 3 UFC fights, has averaged 104 fantasy points per fight because of his finish rate. And you figure, we talked about this earlier, this is going to be a jiu-jitsu matchup. So
I think they get points for passing too, right?
They get points for
Hey, Ryan, where are you finding all the information so that people know how to make a good betting odd on DraftKings? What are you looking at to find out, like, what are the rules? And
you just go on. Yeah, you just go on DraftKings, and then you just go to create a lineup, and then you can go in there, like, you can look at the rules. So just a real quick rundown.
I've never used it before.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun. Like I said, like, you can do $2 double ups. If you win $4. Like, you know, but it makes it a little bit more fun to watch.
Better than buying a scratch off.
Significant strikes will land you half a point. Advances will land you +3 points. Takedown +5. Reversals and sweeps +5. So you have a good, again, wrestler, jiu-jitsu fighter. This is also why I'm picking Daniel Cormier in this one, because he can load you up with a ton of points. And then a knockdown is +10 points. And then by round, first round win is 90 points, 70, 45, 40, 40, 30 for the respective rounds. So, so that's it. And then my dark horses in there, I'm going to have to say, has been Felice Herrig, only because she has a ton of experience. Jandiroba is still a little bit new to the UFC, even though she has a lot of fights behind her. She's from Brazil, and in Brazil, we've seen that they can sometimes inflate their numbers in their professional careers. So I just think Herrig might be a good person there to pick for an underdog. And then Dos Santos was my other big pick. So Marlon Vera is also a solid pick if you didn't feel confident in either of those two. So those are going to be my top 3 dark horses. And that should, So that'll leave you with the lineup I gave you. Again, that's Cormier, Rosenstruck, Pichel, Burns, Dodson, Malley. That'll leave you $100 remaining salary. That's it, people. That's my betting odds for this one.
And we get 10% of whatever you're winning.
You don't get.
Play your own DraftKings, damn it.
Yeah, play your own DraftKings.
DraftKings is fun, man. One night commitment. That's all.
I'm telling the listeners, if they win some money, we get 10%.
Yeah. It's not like fantasy football or baseball, like where you're committed for a while. So. All right, cool. Let's move back over to the fights now that we kind of covered our DraftKings picks. Man, the hype train in Sugar Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Vera. This one should be a fun matchup. I can't wait. Sean O'Malley's 12-0. Marlon Vera's 15-6-1, but don't let his record fool you. He's a fun fighter. He's an exciting, electric fighter. Guys, what do you see happening in this fight?
Marlon's going to be the first guy for O'Malley that really matches up size-wise as best as he can in the division. So that's what I'm interested to see, is because, Sean's so used to being able to dominate the range and get in and out on his own terms, not get hit. So it'll be interesting to see, because Marlon Vera, he's a crafty striker, man. He can mix it up well.
Yeah, and I feel like in his last couple of fights, like, he threw some shots that I definitely wasn't expecting, extremely unorthodox. And I mean, he packs some power behind his punches.
He throws with malicious intent.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like in this one, knowing how much hype Sean O'Malley has, I think he's going to come in here with just absolutely nothing to lose, and he's going to try and take his head off. So I'm excited for this fight more than any other fight Sean O'Malley's been in the past couple of fights with the UFC.
Do you think Sean O'Malley got in his head by dyeing his hair the Ecuador flag colors?
I think it's going to piss him off for sure.
No, Marlon was like, no, that's cool, man. He's just representing. I appreciate it.
I mean, shit. I mean, look what Floyd Mayweather used to do. He used to come in dressed all up in Mexican. His biggest fight day was on Cinco de Mayo. So, and yes, I mean, yeah, I think it's a cool thing. But I'm excited for this fight. Like Sean said, I think it's going to be his toughest test yet. But Sean O'Malley is just so composed. When he's in that octagon, I was listening to one of the UFC episodes today, The Embedded, and he read a quote from a book and how he actually watches the fight after the fight, realizing that he wasn't actually in the fight himself. Like, he is actually in his art, and he just completely changes the way he is when he's in the octagon. And I think having that mindset and being able to kind of just disengage from who he is as a person and being just in his art as a fighter makes him just completely different than any other fighter in the bantamweight division. So I'm excited to see him fight and keep climbing the rankings here.
To be fair, he's also not high when he's in the cage like he is all the time when he's not. He's not. So yeah, he is a different person. He's sober in the cage. No, I'm just kidding.
You think?
He's very composed, man. I think he really hit that nail on the head there. He is very composed, but more importantly, he seems to have that precision striking. Like he picks his shots so well. We saw that against Eddie Wineland, man. He picks his shots very well, and I don't think that Marlon Vera is that accurate. He's a very unorthodox striker. He makes the fights fun, but I think that he can get picked apart here because he still gives up a size advantage. Like to your point, Sean, like he is a little bit taller, but Marlon Vera is only 5'8" to Sugar Sean O'Malley's 5'11" for that division.
Yeah, for the division, he's going to match
sure.
up size well as
for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and you're right. Like, there's not that many tall guys, so 5'8" itself is big for that division. We saw
even featherweight. I think Zabit's the only one that really matches him size wise.
Yeah, so that this one I think is going to be very interesting because we're going to be able to see if Sugar Sean O'Malley can take that next step. He took that next step against Eddie Wineland. He proved that he deserved to be at that level. Now can he break into that top 10 potentially with a win here, a big resounding win here against Marlon Vera? That'll be very interesting. I don't even know if Marlon Vera has ever been finished in his career.
I don't think he's been TKO'd or knocked out.
No, I think you're right. I think he's only lost by decision. He's only ever lost by decision. So if Sugar Sean O'Malley could put that could be a big feather in his cap going into that top 10, to put himself in that top 10 by finishing Marlon Vera here. So
the one thing that you can compare him to Conor and Israel and John Jones, these guys who have made superstar status, is he gets better every fight. And every time the expectation gets higher, he still exceeds it. So
yeah. And the guy just seems to love fighting.
Yeah, I mean, he really has like that superstar like persona with him. Like it feels real. Like a lot of these guys, you get a lot with the UFC trying to hype up some of these guys, and sometimes like I don't know, I'm not sure, I'm not sold yet. But I think a lot of people have been sold from day one. There's just something. There's guys that just have those intangibles. It's just you can't really explain it. They just have it.
Yeah. On the flip side of the coin, what do you think's next if Marlon knocks down the hype train?
The world's in front of him, man. Yeah. Bantamweight's a ridiculous division. It is deep right now. So he's got the whole world in front of him, and I think that that's easily going to catapult him into that top 10 to be in that mix up there. Because I mean, he has a great UFC run. I mean, he's lost to Yadong Song, Douglas Silva de Andrade, John Lineker. I mean, those are good those are good names to have decision losses to. And in between those losses, he has, I think, 8 wins. So, so he's been 8-3 just considering those.
Kind of one of those guys that he's just like knocking on the door of like the ranked fighters, the upper echelon of the division. So, yeah,
for sure. And I mean, and he's still young too. He's only 27. Marlon Vera. Both these guys are young. They could be the future of the division. So it would be interesting to see. I just think, to the point that we kind of talked about, I think Sugar Sean O'Malley has the intangibles. I think he's a superstar in the waiting, and it's his time. So I'm going with Sugar Sean here.
Yeah, I think to your point, his precision is just going to be too much. I think he's going to use Marlon's aggression against him. He's going to move. His movement is second to none. I mean, his head movement's not quite there, but his full body movement, his angles, it's all there. I think he gets a decision. I don't think he quite gets the big shot.
Likewise, I'm gonna go with Sean O'Malley winning this one, but the one thing that I'm gonna look for is Sean O'Malley can he take a punch? I don't feel like in a lot of his fights he's been hit a lot, or been weighed on a lot against the cage or on the ground, and I feel like Marlon Vera is gonna do that, try and tire him out from throwing that right hand and being so precise. I feel like they're going to be fighting in a phone booth per se. Mm-hmm. But the fighting odds are pretty big on this. I mean, Sean O'Malley is coming in at a -310 against Marlon Vera against a +240.
It's probably just because a lot of the Vegas money people are throwing at O'Malley because everybody knows who he is. But nobody knows who Marlon Vera is, really.
No, I think there's a lot of truth behind that because, I mean, anytime you watch a Marlon Vera fight, I don't even think he's on a main card. I think he's always on like an undercard, and it's not even like a big card.
I think this is his first pay-per-view.
Yeah, no, this is putting him on the map here. But yeah, I'm going Sean O'Malley. But we'll see. I think it's going to be a dogfight, to be honest. I think like I said earlier, it's going to be his toughest bout And if not, then I think we're on to some really big fights coming up next.
I think as MMA fans, we all want to see O'Malley versus Jan in the next year. 100%. So yeah, O'Malley, please, man, just be the guy you're supposed to be.
I'd rather see, honestly, O'Malley versus Aljamain Sterling more than Jan. I feel like that would be a little bit more of an exciting fight for me.
More exciting.
Yeah. Oh well, yeah. I mean, guess the fact because they're both strikers.
Yeah.
But I love Aljamain Sterling, plus because he's from Long Island, so I'm rooting for him to get that.
Aljamain should be fighting Jan next. There is no reason that Aljamain Sterling
actually said, "I don't know" in a press conference. I was like, "Get the fuck out of here."
He said, "I don't know," because he's waiting. He's like, "How much? Like, what else do I have to do? Do I have to build Dana White a house to live in for the rest of his life? Like, what, do I have to pay him myself? Do I have to give him my salary? Give him an arm? What do I have to do to get a fight here?" The guy is so deserving for that next bantamweight title shot. It's ridiculous. The fact that there's even a conversation about who should fight next is ridiculous in of itself.
Yeah, there's nobody else.
Yeah, you could even make it. We've already made this argument that it probably should have been, or it should have been Sterling versus Jan and not Jose versus Jan in that title fight. So but that's neither here nor there.
That Sterling versus Sandhagen should have been the fight.
Yeah, 100%. So, all right, guys. So we got through the co-main event. Let's get to this main event because we got a lot to talk about here. Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier. Man, we got a ton of
movie story. Like, I don't think Hollywood could quite write a script like this. I mean, you see where both these guys have come from, like Stipe, the firefighter who cleans toilets, the world heavyweight champion. DC, the former Olympian, all that he went through with John Jones. I mean, DC knocks him out. DC, not known for his power, gets a first-round knockout in the first fight. Stipe comes back after getting, beat up in that second fight, gets his knockout. I mean,
in a comeback.
Like this
Stipe with the longest streak in defending a UFC heavyweight title as well. So this is a story for the fucking books here. But Brian, I will say, I hope your decision from DraftKings is different for the actual fight.
I'll tell you where my heart's at and where my head's at because like many fights, there are two different ways. But I mean, if we go back and look at the way these guys fought it back at 221, I think it was, and then 240, and now they're back at 252. I mean, 3 times in a row, these guys are going to be fighting each other. I mean, it's insane. To your point, the first time, they only got about 25 strikes each before Daniel Cormier finished it. The second time around, these guys were just landing punches on each other, but it looked like Stipe was about to go down again, and Daniel Cormier was going to keep his belt, retire, walk away, and say, "I'm done." And then he took that body shot and went down like a sack of potatoes in the 4th round. Stipe got that belt back, and now we're gonna finish it off here in this 3rd fight, man. And I think what's most exciting is Daniel Cormier is talking about bringing his wrestling back into it because he said he got so comfortable striking. I can't blame him. He was picking apart Stipe, and I'm so interested to see how well his wrestling is going to do against Stipe too.
In the first round of the second fight, he took him down pretty easy and he controlled him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but before I go into that, just real quick, throw some stats at you from their last fight. Daniel Cormier landed 69% of his punches. 69%.
His boxing came a long way.
It is insane. I mean, we talk about high-level strikers are usually around that 50 percentile. He landed almost 70 in that last fight. And then Stipe actually had a high land percentage too, which I was surprised about. Just because looking back, maybe he just didn't land the harder strikes. But
yeah, I don't think because he was moving back a lot in that fight, so I don't think I'm sure a lot of that was jabs or maybe some like quick counters that really didn't have a lot of power behind them.
Mm-hmm.
And quite the outplay. I mean, DC was just marching forward for 3.5 rounds.
Yeah, it was insane. I'm going to have to pull up the strike count here in a second, but for you guys, talk about the fight a little bit.
Dan?
I think for me, watching a couple of those embedded videos, Stipe admits the fact that he knows Daniel's a better fighter than him, but he knows that he's the bigger, stronger fighter. And I think coming in knowing that, I think he's got a great game plan behind him. And I'm honestly Miocic all the way. I hate to see Cormier go out on his shield in his last fight, but I've always been a Stipe fan, and I just honestly think Stipe is going to just once again overpower him, same as it happens with John Jones. It takes a little bit. People take a punishment from Daniel Cormier in those fights, but there's something about him. He always has the same rhythm, and somebody just catches how he falls off, like how he stays in that rhythm and catches with him off guard. And I feel like Stipe is going to do that. Maybe not with a body shot this time, but it's going to be something, and I feel like Stipe is going to fall.
The thing about
Daniel
gives up so much height and reach because of his size. That he kind of has to do some unorthodox movements that opens him up to, some bad things like John Jones kicking him in the head.
I mean, just think about it in this last fight. As big as Stipe is, for him to be throwing those clear body shots on somebody so much smaller was unreal. Because, I mean, that opened up himself, but DC just had nothing for it. And I feel like Stipe is going to just pull something out. I think he probably watched the tapes and he's seen some openings that DC is going to have, and I feel like he's just going to pull it out, similar to how John Jones does.
DC was thinking, because, you don't really see a lot of people throw hooks to the body in MMA because, you can catch a knee to the face real quick. They time it. And I think he was just, more focused on protecting his head. He's got that big stomach too, so he's probably, I can take this all day.
I don't know. He has a weak body shot. I mean, you figure he actually folded against Anderson Silva. In that fight, Anderson came in on 2 days' notice after surgery, and I think it was in the third round. He ended up just snapping, doing a front kick to the stomach, and Daniel folded when he took that shot. So for some reason, his body seems like a weak spot. I think Stipe recognized that. He's been open and vocal about that. So I think we're going to see Stipe trying to punch him in the stomach, and we're going to see DC trying to avoid that by wrestling during this fight, which he said that he needs to get behind a little bit more.
Push back on the wrestling piece. I feel like DC blinds himself sometimes with so much confidence, because he sat there and said, he's like, in the first fight, I knocked him out. I came into the second fight, and I was like, I knew I was going to win the fight. And I feel like because he won the first fight, he knew he lost the second fight because his mindset was not in the right place. He's coming into this like, I have a clear mindset. I feel like he's going to be overconfident, and I think he's going to stand. And I think he's going to think he's going to stand and bang, and he's going to get knocked out. I don't think his wrestling is going to come in as much as he wants it to.
I think it will. I think it definitely will, because he's going to avoid those shots. He knows he got knocked out in the fourth round. He's not going to want to sit there and take that opportunity. He knows this is his last fight. This is his last fight. He's going
to go to his bread and butter. He's going to go to that single leg. He's going to make him balance on it, and then he's going to take him down, sit on him, tire him out, and then maybe he'll stand with him when Stipe gets tired.
Yeah, he'll wear him out wherever he needs to. If he has to start standing and he has to put pressure on him, he will absolutely do that. But do not think for a minute that when that opening is there, he is not going to go to his wrestling. He needs to. Like he needs to ensure that victory. This is his last fight. And to me, why not go back to the basics? You can't forget what got you there in the first place, and that is his Olympic caliber wrestling.
Yeah, and even though Stipe wrestled in college, Daniel was an Olympian, and there are several levels to wrestling.
Oh, 100%.
We've seen guys that are, considered good MMA wrestlers that just get dominated by other wrestlers. It's not even close. Like, look at Khabib.
Yeah.
No, there's no matching to that, gentleman.
Yeah. But to the point, okay, so this is the numbers I was talking about in the second fight. So Daniel Cormier landed 230 strikes out of 317 attempts for a 68%.
And that's why you can't blame him. He didn't have an argument, but I mean, he was landing, and he previously knocked him out. So you're probably thinking, dude, any punch could do it.
Yeah. And then we were also talking about, too, Stipe landed 123 of 229, which put him at 53%, which is a high percentage, but it didn't feel like that during the fight. It definitely didn't feel like that.
So much.
Yeah, Cormier was just landing everything, it seemed like he couldn't miss a punch. So I don't know. I still think Daniel's going to come in this one. All right, so here's where this is incorporated, Dan. We talked about this, my head and my heart. My head says Daniel Cormier is going to win. He's going to walk off. He's going to retire. He's going to be done as the UFC heavyweight champ, holding that UFC gold one more time. My heart wishes that Stipe would win it because – to me, he's the more deserving of the heavyweight champs. He's been fighting in that division his whole career. And I'd like to see him win because he could potentially retire after this fight too, which I'll ask you guys the odds on that one here in a minute.
We didn't talk about it, though.
He's the quiet type, though. You can't tell. Like, Stipe is the kind of guy. He's reserved. He's cool, calm, collect. He's still firefighting. He still has that job outside of fighting. I would not be like. There's nothing left for him in the heavyweight division other than a rematch with Ngannou.
Everybody.
Why would you want to fight Ngannou again? You're healthy. I mean, like, why would you want to fight that guy again?
Yeah, but what about him? What about him walking in Jones to this
that's
heavyweight
I would say
division?
the only way either of those guys has another fight is if John Jones is the opponent.
Yep, I was just about to say
money.
That. Yes,
massive money.
If John
that's not the health risk of fighting Ngannou.
Yeah, 100%. If John Jones is not the other name on that contract, I think that both because Daniel Cormier is retiring. Yeah.
No, actually, DC's coach Javier Mendez said he would fight John at heavyweight if the money was right.
Really, you think so?
Cormier, right? Yeah, the trilogy. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, if he wins this trilogy
plus one.
Yeah, there's no reason for him not to, walk John Jones into heavyweight and close out another trilogy, trying to come on top. But I'm ready for DC to go. I'm Stipe all the way, all day.
How does he pull it off?
How does Stipe pull it off? Honestly, I think for everybody, it's going to be an absolute upset knockout. Nobody's going to expect that. I think he's just going to catch him, and I think his head's going to bounce right off the canvas. I'm calling it, man. I'm shooting for the stars with this one. I don't think this is going to go all 5.
What round? All right, if you're calling it, what round?
I'm calling second round right here.
What? Second round knockout. Okay, you heard it first, man.
Think about it. Turn back to the first fight. Did you ever fucking think nobody was coming out of the first round with that little hit? I did not. So I think Stipe's coming in, and I think he's just going to roll right through him. I don't think DC knows what he's walking into this fight.
Hey, I love Miocic. If he wins, it won't hurt my feelings. But Daniel's too good, man. He's too good. He's too put together.
I have so much mixed feelings for whoever wins and loses because I would want to see both these guys go out as a champion because I think they both earned that right. But I just think Daniel, and he showed it in their first 2 fights, that he's the better fighter all around. I think in every aspect, I think he's the better fighter. And if he uses his wrestling, I think it's game over for Stipe.
To me, technically, yeah. To me, they have fought 5 rounds, and to me, he has won 4.5 of those rounds.
Yeah.
So, but actually, I'd even be so bold to say 4 3/4 of those rounds. So, but all right, guys, here's another question now. Who is, if either guy wins, are they the heavyweight greatest of all time? And there's a caveat to this because you figure Stipe has that argument.
Stipe definitely is, and I think there's an argument for Cormier.
Now, Sean, let me add a second question to that. Are you basing that based off of the wins? Or are you basing that off what they've done for the game in UFC? Is Stipe the best heavyweight?
Stipe is the best heavyweight because he's the longest reigning champion, 2-time. He took everybody. I mean, there was nobody that he hasn't taken out in that division, except Kane. I think Kane's the only one, but by the time he would have fought Kane, it wouldn't have been the same. It wouldn't have meant as much.
Yeah, no, that would have been a.
But I mean, look what he did to Ngannou, man. I mean, he took those shots in that first round. He weathered a massive storm. He weathered Hurricane Irma and some.
For all that you don't know, hit Florida. Hurricane Irma 3 years ago. But what about Ryan? Are you speaking up next? You want me to go?
No, you can go ahead, bud.
I think for the same reasons that Sean said, I think Stipe is the best, being that he had gone through everybody while they're in their prime, at the end of their prime, or just coming up. I think he ran through every great fighter that there was and is. But if I had to say all around, like the best heavyweight, I'd still have to turn back to my boy Iceman Chuck Liddell. I think he changed the game.
Light heavyweight.
Oh, no, that was a light heavyweight. Oh, my God. I'm sorry. So then I would have to say.
Someone's been drinking tonight.
Not Chuck Liddell. So then for the heavy. No, then you know what? It would have to be Stipe.
I don't think it's even a question because, I mean, the run that he went on before Daniel beat him, I don't think there was another one in the division like that.
Let's run down the list real quick of names. All right, this is here. Let's go down Daniel Cormier's list for heavyweight: Stipe Miocic, Derek Lewis, Stipe Miocic, Volkan Ozdemir. That's his heavyweight.
Volkan's not a heavyweight.
All right, that was his last light heavyweight.
Yeah, that was a light heavyweight title fight. But he beat Bigfoot. in Bellator.
Yeah, but that was what I'm talking about in the UFC. If we go over to Stipe, before the Daniel Cormier fights, Francis Ngannou, Junior Dos Santos, Alistair Overeem, Fabricio Verdum, Andre Arlovski, Mark Hunt, Junior Dos Santos again, Gabriel Gonzaga, Roy Nelson, Stefan Struve, who he lost to in that one. But that's two totally different lists of names there.
Yeah,
for 100%. And that's my point is DC doesn't deserve to be heavyweight GOAT. He's only fought two guys in the heavyweight division. So to me, it's either Stipe or nothing. I mean, Daniel Cormier, you can make
that's the one division that there's really just not much competition because for a long time nobody was really reigning over that division.
No, but I mean, hey, at the same time, that's what makes you great. I mean, that's what makes you a GOAT is when you can do that, is when you can reign over and take a spot that nobody can hold on to.
Every other division has had a champion like that, except lightweight too. Actually, lightweight I don't think really have. Maybe BJ, but lightweight's never really been a dominant weight class either.
Yeah. So I don't know. If you look at those names, you're considering he beat Alistair Overeem. You're considering he beat Verdum. You're considering he beat Dos Santos. Those are all ex-champs. Yes.
Early he really wasn't in much trouble.
Andre Arlovski, man. Mark Hunt. I mean, that's just some names right there. Those are ex-champs, man. DC hasn't done that at heavyweight. What's that?
Arlovski was on a run too when he fought.
Yeah, he was. So to me, it's either Stipe Miocic I think he's already the heavyweight GOAT as of right now, just because he did have the longest reigning heavyweight. He was the longest reigning heavyweight champ. I just don't think DC gets that title in this win, even if he does get this win.
I think he's more. Yeah, DC's just more his whole body of work.
I had somebody. Yeah.
If you want to say one of the MMA GOATs, that's different. If you want to talk MMA GOAT and where he stands on that list.
He's not an MMA GOAT.
You don't think so with his run at light heavyweight? I mean, literally, he would have ran that division if John Jones was
all
there.
I say is John Jones.
Well, John Jones
was there.
Yeah, well, John Jones is the GOAT. I'm just talking about we're talking 10, 15 best fighters all time. You don't think DC's up there in MMA?
We're gonna make a GOAT list of 10 to 15. I would say GOATs are top 5.
Yeah. So you have to argue. Okay, but all right. Even if you just do top 5, would you not argue that if he's not in that, if he's not number 5, he's sitting right outside of that?
Yes, outside of it.
Yeah, he's top 10.
So
we're talking about GOATs. We're talking about Anderson Silva, John Jones, George St. Pierre.
Yeah,
and Mighty Mouse.
Matt Hughes.
You can put Mighty Mouse in that conversation. That's it.
Yep.
What about Matt Hughes?
No,
Matt Hughes.
He lost to GSP.
Yep. So,
and GSP had a longer reign. I mean, I know he beat GSP once.
What about BJ Penn?
No. Yeah, he beat him. No, BJ Penn now. So, yeah. Yep. He was always the could have been, should have been, but never was. That's
really the real 3 argument is Anderson Silva, George St. Pierre, John Jones.
100%
discussion, in my opinion.
And to my point, that's where DC belongs. He belongs in just the outside of that.
He's the second tier.
He falls just outside of that top 5. He doesn't deserve to be heavyweight GOAT. It's Miocic. Yeah. I think regardless of his legacy is intact, he is going to go out whenever he retires, whether it's this fight or the next fight, as the heavyweight GOAT. Period.
Yeah, I think Stipe is the heavyweight GOAT, but I think DC, in terms of the entire body of work, is the better legacy.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So.
If he wins, especially if he wins, maybe there's an argument if he loses, because then if Stipe holds 2 to 3 over him, well, then beat him 2 out of 3. So there's not much.
Then that also means that DC lost to his 2 biggest opponents. He gave up 2 of those 3 fights to each of them. So
Yeah.
So.
If DC had maybe split with John, then maybe you can make an argument for the GOAT discussion because he took out the GOAT, but.
Yeah,
he wasn't even close.
Yeah, unfortunately for DC, he just like the rest of his athletic achievements, he's kind of the second tier guy.
Yep, for sure. All right, guys, let's wrap this thing up. I think we spent enough time on the main event. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be this Saturday at the Apex Center. Any last closing comments for UFC 252, gentlemen?
No,
I'm fucking just excited.
Same here. Watch the language. I'm just fucking kidding. You don't have to watch your language. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to UFC 252 coverage with the Casuals MMA. Again, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube at the Casuals MMA. And you can also follow us on Instagram at _Casuals MMA. Please leave us some likes and comments if you're downloading our podcast or wherever it is. That really helps boost our show, and we appreciate it. We love you guys. Thank you always for watching. We appreciate it, and enjoy the fights this weekend, and we'll catch you next week.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everyone.